I don't want to say these people are not well-meaning, but what I will say is this: there are a number of experts around the world uh, uh, who say that this isn't necessarily the right thing to do or the only thing to do. Um, I'm blanking on his name, the guy from Europe, Van Bush.
Bosch.
Bosch.
Oh,
Yep.
we were just on that paper the other day.
Yeah, and someone of his credentials who is a vaccine expert, and I mean, I guess you can argue that he's as much of a pro-vaxxer, if you want to use that kind of language, as anyone, says it's a big mistake. What I'll say, as from the standpoint of my expertise in terms of treating patients as an internal medicine specialist, cardiologist specialist, and the like, is the following. First and foremost, let's look at the disease state. The vast majority of people, certainly below the age of 60, probably going to argue below the age of 74, survive this thing, and greater than 90%, and 99.9% in the younger age group, and so on. So you have a very high survival rate of this disease state. The normal immune system is equipped to fight viruses, bacteria, etc. That's what it's there for. So a healthy individual, by definition, with a healthy, intact immune system, is immune to the virus, because you have an immune system, and that's what it's designed for. There's this discussion that you have to get to have immunity is ridiculous. You have an immune system. What you're doing with for your audience members who may not understand it, you're taking a part of the biological agent, the virus, in this case the mRNA, a segment of the mRNA that codes for the spike protein. You're taking that, you're encapsulating in two cases a man-made device, and in other cases an attenuated virus, and introducing it to the body system so that you can make more spike protein and then make antibodies to that specific spike protein. Essentially, that's how your immune system works. When the coronavirus enters your body, there's a spike protein in the virus. And the body itself says, okay, I see you don't belong here. We're going to create a memory, and we're going to attack you and not let you invade. So that's the same thing that happens with infection. Now, what's the difference? There are a lot of differences that we don't understand. What Bosch talks about is that you give a vaccine during a pandemic, and the mRNA that we're creating and implementing codes for a very specific, spike protein, alignment. And so viruses in nature, like people, don't all look exactly the same. I mean, you may be, let's say, for instance, you are one of 12 children, and maybe you're all boys. So you're one of 12 boys, and y'all grow up. And so your siblings, your 12 boys, you walk into a room, and someone looks across and says, okay, you guys are all brothers. You look alike. But you don't look exactly alike.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's nose is shaped a little different, somebody's eyes, this, that, and the other, somebody's a little taller. But if you look at the boys, you say, okay, I recognize you all to be the Jones boys. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say later on, you come back and maybe a couple of you show up. You say, well, okay, Joe and Larry, you're part of the Jones boys because I saw you guys and you look just like the Jones boys.
Right.
But that's how the immune system sees. They see the spectrum across similarities.
Right.
But if you're given this is my understanding of Bosch's argument, it's one of the arguments, you're coding for a very specific one. So you only recognize Bob Jones.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Jones, Ed Jones, Rick Jones, they all look different, but you're coding just for Bob Jones. So you recognize Bob Jones, you don't recognize the spectrum across the brothers. So if Bob Jones don't show up, but Eric Jones and Rick Jones show up, then it's like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know you guys, I only know this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the antibodies only coded, so mutants are not recognized. Mm-hmm. And you can even argue variations of the wild type may not be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Because even within the wild type, there may be variation within the virus cluster. And so if you, in theory, you can potentially force the immune system to make many of these antibodies that only look for Eric Jones, and you'll suppress the inherent immune system's ability to make antibodies that recognize the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
There's also talk about pathogenic autoimmunity that's been associated with the MERS and the SARS, which are also mRNA. They found that in the animal studies they did. They didn't do animal studies here, so that's a theoretical concern. And so there are theoretical concerns about it. We're also seeing in their reports of people who've been fully catching coronavirus. There's been a report here in Houston, a whole a nursing home, they get the virus. Shortly after that, they still catch coronavirus. They're not necessarily catching it from the but one, that's the evidence of hasn't protected them from catching it. And also, it's possible that may have suppressed their inherent immune system to where maybe they're catching a mutant or maybe they're catching some variation of the wild type that the vaccine doesn't protect against. So I think, as I alluded to earlier, the most important thing to do is to enhance people's overall health and therefore enhance their immune system and therefore improve their ability to fight it. That's not only a theoretical argument, that's how I practice and that's how I've been treating the coronavirus patients that I've seen successfully in the outpatient setting.
If you remember when we were talking on the phone the other day, you were talking about remdesivir and I'm blanking on a couple others that you mentioned, but can you talk about what you have done treating people that get sick with the...
Yeah, so there are a number of people, I don't mention their names or relationship to me, but there's a lady that contracted, became ill and started vomiting. She had gone to the emergency room and they tested and she confirmed positive. So we had started her on, we have an immune boosting supplement with quercetin and zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, and acetylcholine that predisposes to glutathione production. We started on that plus a grapefruit seed extract substance that has large antiviral effects, antibacterial effects as well. And then I put on cold pressed juices and I had it on raw food. I gave her one of our raw key lime pies and things like that so that she has something, just raw food to eat. So basically raw foods, those supplements and things, and in about 4 hours she was feeling better, and the next day she was almost back to normal. 2 days, it was all gone. So that's one situation. I've had other people I've treated in a very similar fashion who then turned around. If they have aches and pains, and they put on curcumin, reduce inflammation. So we treat systemically. Vitamin C helps in terms of reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammation. Of course, and zinc, has been shown can kill the virus.
Right.
Vitamin D, there's some evidence that has come out of one study, I think, showed that certain patients in the hospital, the ones who died all had a vitamin D level less than 30.
Yeah.
With a lower limit of normal. So we do know that enhancing vitamin D and other supplements and nutrients can help. Plant-based diet. One of my patients had really bad heart failure and he's morbidly obese. We put him on a raw detox regimen. And during the time he was on a raw detox diet, I think he was probably maybe 5-6 weeks into it, he had contracted COVID. And so I think he had been sick for a couple of days. He got over it. And what he told me was that, he had had pneumonias in the past. That was the mildest pneumonia that he had ever contracted. Now, he was morbidly obese with heart failure. Now, his weight was going down, but he was still morbidly obese during the detox. The point is that in the context of optimal nutrition, despite being in a high-risk group, he actually did well with the virus and didn't have to go to the hospital and so on.
Yeah.
So, and there are other examples we can make, but the point is that we've seen lots of evidence that what we currently do is our older patients who are at high risk, we put them on as a prophylaxis to prevent, and then we can use it also therapeutically, and there's a lot of data that's been published.
So it kind of seems like, and then Armin, I know you're pulling some stuff up, and we'll talk about that, but it just kind of seems like, based on what you're saying and based on what other people have said, including somebody like Joe Verone or Dr. Pam Popper, who we recently had, This thing able to be beaten with completely natural cures, treatments, therapies.
Yeah, starting by being healthy. I mean, I don't
Right.
want to, I can't overemphasize, fresh fruit and vegetables, naturally raw plant-based diet, fresh air, sunshine. We teach our patients grounding. It's going to help you sleep better. The sunlight into your pineal glands can help you sleep better, better sleep. All these things. I mean, these are this. I mean, it's we're talking about and mask and flatten the curve and be safe. I mean, that's fine, but really, this is just basic stuff.